The galaxy had long feared her species. They were whispered about in council chambers and in dark corners of space stations. Their touch was death. Even a brush of skin could end a life in an instant. Soldiers called them the untouchables. Diplomats refused to meet them face to face, and entire fleets avoided their worlds. Yet when war broke out, their armies marched first and planets fell within hours. The human fleets had never faced them directly before. Humans were late arrivals to the galactic stage, considered reckless but resourceful. They were not supposed to matter in this war, yet when the untouchables descended on the outposts along the rim, humans were among the first to stand in their way. Their ships were not the largest, their weapons not the most advanced, but their determination held longer than expected. On a shattered battlefield, smoke and plasma still burning in the air, a human soldier stumbled through the wreckage. His uniform was torn, his weapon lost, and his arm hung limply at his side. He had survived the orbital bombardment, the ground strike, and the chaos of the alien vanguard. Few others had. Then he saw her. She was unlike anything he had ever seen, standing tall among the ruins, her skin glowing faintly in the dim light, her eyes like burning stars. Around her, fallen soldiers lay lifeless, their armor intact but their bodies still. She had not even drawn a weapon. She noticed him immediately. Her kind could sense the beat of a heart, the warmth of blood, the charge of life itself. Her steps were slow, deliberate, her face unreadable as she walked closer. Any other soldier would have fled or raised his weapon in fear, but he had none, and his body was too broken to run. The human straightened as much as he could. He did not want to die crawling. His chest rose and fell with ragged breaths, yet his eyes met hers without looking away. She paused, studying him as though she could not understand why he did not collapse like the others. Her hand, elegant and glowing, lifted as if she meant to end him with the lightest touch. He should have felt terror, but what came instead was a strange calm. She was beautiful, in a way that defied reason. The tendrils of light that crowned her head glowed softly, her skin shone as if touched by starlight, and her gaze carried something beyond cruelty or hatred. It carried loneliness. When she reached out, he did not retreat. Instead, he raised his own broken hand and met hers halfway. Their fingers touched. Every story said that this should have been the end, that his life should have been burned out in an instant. But nothing happened. Her eyes widened. The glow in her veins flickered with confusion. She felt his warmth against her skin, felt the life inside him, and yet he still stood. No human, no creature, no being had ever touched one of her kind and lived. Yet this man not only survived, he looked at her as though she was not a monster. For the first time she hesitated. The battlefield noise faded in her mind. She forgot the orders of her people, forgot the war that raged across the galaxy, forgot even the fear that defined her existence. She felt something she had never felt before: connection. The human's grip, weak though it was, did not waver. He did not know why he was still alive, but he understood that this moment mattered. Against all reason, he did not let go. She finally spoke, her voice low and haunting, a melody of both danger and wonder. "Why are you not afraid?" The soldier, breathing hard, managed a faint smile. "Because I see you." And in that instant, the war no longer felt like the only story worth telling. The battlefield remained quiet around them, though smoke curled into the sky and the ground trembled with distant bombardments. She stood frozen, her hand still in his, her glowing eyes locked on his face. It made no sense. His touch should have drained the life from him instantly. Every law of her kind, every history and record of her species, said this was impossible. She pulled her hand back sharply, expecting him to collapse belatedly, but the human only lowered his arm, still alive, still breathing, still staring at her without fear. Confusion settled into her chest like a weight she had never carried before. "Who are you?" she asked, her tone sharp yet tinged with something unfamiliar, almost like curiosity. The human struggled to stay upright. His uniform was marked with burns, his skin smeared with blood and dirt, but his eyes did not dim. Just a soldier, he answered. Her kind did not believe in chance. If something happened, it had purpose. If this man could touch her without dying, then he was not just a soldier. She circled him slowly, studying him, trying to see what her senses told her was impossible. His heartbeat thudded steady in her ears, his warmth radiated against her skin, and his courage shone brighter than any weapon. She had killed hundreds that day. Her people expected her to kill thousands more before the war was done. Yet for the first time, she could not lift her hand to strike. Something about him disarmed her in ways no blade or shield ever had. The human swayed, his strength nearly gone, but he kept his head high. "Why did you stop?" he asked. His voice was hoarse yet steady. She blinked, caught off guard by his question. No one had ever dared to ask her why she killed, why she obeyed her nature. It was as if he believed she could choose, as if she were more than the death she carried in her touch. "Because you should be dead," she admitted softly. He gave a faint smile, the kind that seemed foolish to anyone else, but carried a strange warmth. "Guess I missed the rule book." Her lips curved, almost against her will. She had not smiled in years, not since before she was trained as a weapon, before she became what others feared. For a fleeting moment, she felt like something other than a soldier of her kind. Voices crackled through her comms, cold and commanding. Her commanders demanded status reports, demanded confirmation that the battlefield had been cleared. She ignored them. For the first time in her life, she silenced their voices. The human stumbled, his body finally betraying him. Without thinking, she caught him before he hit the ground. He gasped in pain but did not resist her arms around him. His weight was solid, his breath ragged, but present. She should not have cared, but she did. She looked down at him, this fragile creature who had no right to stand against her, no reason to survive her touch. And yet he had done both. He had touched her hand without fear and lived. He had looked at her not as a monster, but as someone worth seeing. The human whispered, his words barely audible. "If you're going to kill me, just don't make it slow." Her chest tightened. She realized she could not. Something inside her rebelled at the thought. For the first time in her long life, she felt powerless, not because he was stronger than her, but because he had awakened something she thought her kind could never have. Mercy. She lifted him easily, carrying him away from the burning field. He tried to protest, but his voice failed him. His head rested against her shoulder, his breath shallow yet steady. She moved with purpose now, but not the kind her commanders would have wanted. As the fires of war roared behind them, she whispered a promise to herself, a vow she did not fully understand yet. She would not let him die. Not like this. Not by her hand, nor by anyone else's. And as the night swallowed the battlefield, she carried him into the unknown, their story only just beginning. The alien carried the wounded human through the ruins of the battlefield. Her feet moved silently over broken stone and scorched earth, her eyes glowing softly in the dim light. Every step felt heavier than the last, not because of his weight, but because of what she was doing. She had never spared anyone before. She had never defied her kind. Yet here she was, holding a human soldier as if he mattered. He stirred weakly in her arms, his voice rough. Why are you helping me?" She glanced down at him. His face was pale, streaked with dirt and blood, but his eyes still burned with stubborn life. She had no easy answer. "Because you should be dead," she said finally. "But you are not. I must know why." He gave a weak laugh that turned into a cough. "Maybe. I'm too stubborn to die." Her lips tightened, almost forming another smile. It unsettled her. Smiles had no place in her people's lives. They were raised to be weapons, not individuals. But something about this human's defiance against fate stirred something inside her. The trees of the alien forest rose ahead, their bioluminescent leaves glowing in shifting colors. She slipped beneath their branches, leaving the burning field behind. The forest hummed with life, strange creatures watching from the shadows, their eyes reflecting light. The air was thick with energy, a reminder of the world's danger and beauty. She laid him gently against the roots of a glowing tree. His body slumped, his chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. She touched his forehead lightly, not with her killing hand, but with her other, the one her kind believed held less power. His skin was hot with fever. His wounds were serious. If she did nothing, he would not last long. She had never cared for the weak before. To her kind, weakness was an excuse for death. Yet now she felt an ache she did not understand. She wanted him to live. The human opened his eyes slightly, struggling to focus. "What's your name?" Her breath caught. No one had asked her that in years. Among her kind, names were taken from them when they became soldiers. She was a weapon, nothing more. But once, long ago before the training, she had a name. She hesitated, then whispered it. Lyra. His lips moved, forming the name softly. Lyra. His voice gave it weight, gave it meaning again. She felt something stir inside, her chest something she thought was long buried. "You should not speak," she told him gently. "Save your strength." He smirked faintly. "If I stop talking, I might never wake up." His stubbornness made her shake her head. Yet she could not deny that his words warmed her in a way that frightened her. She pressed her hand to his wound, feeling the heat of his blood. Her people had healers, but she was not one of them. Still, she tried. She closed her eyes and let the energy within her flow. Not to kill, but to steady his heartbeat. Her kind never used their gift this way. To them, touch was only for destruction. But when she focused on him, her power did not lash out. It shifted, softened, and for a moment his breathing grew easier. His eyes widened slightly. "You're healing me?" She frowned. "I don't know what I am doing." But she did know. Her power responded differently with him. Where others fell lifeless at a touch, he survived, even grew stronger. Their connection was not death. It was something else entirely. She pulled her hand back quickly, unsettled. Yet he was already stronger than before. The fever still clung to him, but his breaths no longer sounded like the last ones of a dying man. Lyra sat back, her glowing eyes fixed on him. For the first time in her life, she wondered if her kind had been wrong about themselves. If her touch could destroy but also heal, then what did that mean about her? The human, though half-conscious, whispered again. "Thank you, Lyra." She lowered her gaze, her chest tightening with an emotion she could not name. The war felt distant now. The orders of her people felt meaningless. Only this human survival mattered. For the first time, she began to think that maybe her future would not be written in death, but in something she had never been allowed to believe in. Choice. The night stretched long in the alien forest, the glowing trees casting soft light over the human and the one who had spared him. Lyra stayed close, watching his chest rise and fall, listening to his uneven breaths. Each sound reminded her of how fragile he was, and yet at the same time how unyielding. Most beings who faced her never even had a chance to breathe again. He not only survived, but he still clung to life with a force that unsettled her. She moved silently, gathering plants she knew had soothing effects. Her people rarely used them, for they healed themselves differently. But she remembered scraps of knowledge from her childhood before the training erased such things. Grinding the leaves with her palm, she made a paste and carefully placed it against his wound. The human flinched, his eyes half opening. "That stings," he muttered. "It is supposed to," she replied firmly, though her voice softened at the edges. "It will help." He studied her face, his gaze steady even in his weakened state. "Why do you care if I live?" Her lips pressed together. It was the question she kept asking herself. "Because you should be dead," she repeated. "But you are not. I must know why." "Maybe." He winced as the medicine touched his skin. "Maybe it's not just me. Maybe it's you too." The words sank deep into her. She turned away quickly, unsettled by the thought. No one had ever dared suggest that her people were more than what the galaxy called them. Weapons, killers, untouchables. Yet this human saw something different, something she did not fully understand. A low growl echoed through the forest. Lyra snapped her head up, her senses alert. The forest was alive with predators, some drawn to the scent of blood. She stood, her eyes glowing brighter, her body tense. Out from the shadows emerged a beast with massive claws and a body that shimmered in patches of glowing scales. It stalked closer, its mouth opening to reveal rows of sharp teeth. The human tried to rise, but his body failed him. "What is it?" he asked. "Hungry," Lyra replied, stepping in front of him. The beast lunged, with movements faster than the eye could follow. Lyra caught it mid-strike. Her hand touched its chest, and in an instant its body stiffened, collapsing lifeless at her feet. She stood over it, breathing steadily, her hand still faintly glowing from the energy she had. The human stared in awe. He had seen her people's power in battle, but to watch it so closely was different. It was terrifying and beautiful at once. "You could kill me just as easily," he said quietly. She turned back to him, her eyes unreadable. "Yes, but I have not." He held her gaze. "Then maybe you never will." His words shook her more than she wanted to admit. She had killed without hesitation for as long as she could remember. But with him, the thought of ending his life felt unbearable. She realized that every time he spoke, every time he looked at her without fear, something inside her changed. She dragged the beast's body away, making sure its blood would not attract more predators, then returned to his side. He was weak, but a spark of life remained in him, brighter than before. "Rest," she told him. "I will keep you safe." His eyes softened at her words, as though he believed them completely. He lay back against the glowing roots, finally, closing his eyes, his trust in her as natural as his breathing. Lyra sat beside him, her senses sharp for danger, but her thoughts restless. She had never promised safety to anyone. She had never wanted to. But now, watching this fragile human who should have been nothing more than another casualty of war, she felt bound by a vow she could not break. The galaxy still burned with war. But here in the forest, a different story was beginning. One where a human dared to touch the untouchable, and an alien girl discovered a part of herself she thought had been lost forever. Morning light filtered through the glowing leaves of the alien forest. Lyra sat with her back against a tree, her eyes never leaving the human. He slept uneasily, his body still weak, but no longer fading. She had used her power again during the night carefully, in ways she had never thought possible. Instead of draining life, she had guided it back into him. The act felt strange, unnatural even, yet it worked. He lived because of her. When he stirred awake, his voice was tired but stronger than before. "Still here?" he asked, blinking up at her. "Yes," she replied. "You survived the night." He managed a small smile. "Guess I'm harder to get rid of than you thought." She tilted her head, her glowing eyes narrowing slightly. "You should not be alive at all. Even now, I do not understand." "Maybe you don't need to understand," he said softly. "Maybe just accept it." Her chest tightened. Acceptance was not a word her kind valued. They believed only in control, in power, in obedience to orders. She had never been allowed to accept anything beyond her role. Yet this human spoke as though she had a choice. Before she could respond, a sharp hum filled the air. Lyra's eyes snapped to the treetops. Small drones glided above, scanning the forest floor with red beams. Her people were searching. They would not rest until they found her, and if they discovered she had spared an enemy, she would be executed. Without hesitation, she rose swiftly, pulling the human up with her. He groaned at the sudden movement, his body still sore, but her grip steadied him. "What's happening?" he asked. "They are hunting," she answered. "They are looking for me, and for you." He tensed, realizing the danger. "If they find us—" "They cannot," she interrupted, her voice firm. "We must move." She led him deeper into the forest, moving quickly but carefully to keep him steady. The glowing trees grew denser, the air thicker with strange scents. Creatures scattered at their approach, wary of the aura that clung to her. The human leaned heavily on her arm, yet he did not complain. After some time, they reached a hidden hollow at the base of a massive tree, its roots forming a shelter. She guided him inside, helping him settle against the smooth bark. "You will stay here," she said. "I will draw them away." He shook his head weakly. "No. If they catch you, they'll kill you." Her gaze lingered on him. His concern was foolish, yet it struck her deeply. No one had ever cared whether she lived or died. Her commanders valued her only as long as she could kill. To them, she was a tool, nothing more. But this human's words carried weight she had never felt before. "I am not so easily killed," she said finally, her voice softer than usual. He reached out with a trembling hand, his fingers brushing hers. "Don't go. Not yet. You don't have to fight them alone." Her heart raced at the contact. His touch should have terrified her, should have reminded her of death, yet it steadied her instead. She sank down beside him, her glowing hand resting against the ground. For a moment she let herself breathe. "You speak as though you know me," she said quietly. "Maybe I don't," he admitted. "But I know enough. You're not the monster everyone says you are." Her eyes widened. The word echoed in her mind, monster. It was what the galaxy called her kind. It was what she had accepted herself to be. Yet when he said she wasn't, something inside her believed him. The sound of drones grew fainter as they passed overhead, their search sweeping elsewhere. For now, they were safe. Lyra stayed close, her eyes on the human who had somehow undone everything she thought was true about herself. In that hollow beneath the great tree, she realized the war outside was still raging. But inside this small shelter, something entirely different was taking shape. Not fear, not obedience, not death. Something fragile yet powerful. Trust. For hours the forest remained quiet, but Lyra's senses stayed sharp. She knew her people would not stop searching. They were relentless, trained to hunt until every target was erased. Her commanders would not forgive her disappearance, and if they discovered a human alive by her side, it would be seen as betrayal. The human shifted against the roots of the tree, his eyes half open. "You're restless," he murmured. "I am cautious," she corrected. "My people will not forgive me for this." His brow furrowed. "For sparing me?" "For choosing you," she admitted. The words left her mouth before she realized what she had said. Silence fell between them. Lyra rarely spoke without precision, yet around him, words escaped in ways she could not predict. She turned away, unwilling to show the unease in her expression. The human sat up slowly, his body still, weak but stronger than the night before. "If your people find us, they'll kill you too, won't they?" She nodded. "They will not hesitate. To them I am already dead." His jaw tightened. He tried to stand, but his legs trembled under his weight. She caught him quickly, steadying him with her hands. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither moved. "You should leave me," he said quietly. "If you go back, maybe they'll forgive you." Her voice turned sharp. "Do not speak foolishness. I will not leave you." He gave a weak smile. "You sound certain." "I am," she said firmly. Before more could be said, the distant hum of engines echoed through the forest. Dropships. Her people were not just searching with drones anymore, they were bringing soldiers. Lyra's eyes narrowed, glowing brighter in the shadows. They would sweep the forest clean. She pulled the human to his feet again, supporting his weight against her shoulder. "We must move deeper. They will find this place soon." The forest thickened as they pressed on, roots twisting like barriers, strange creatures scattering at their approach. The human stumbled often, yet never complained. Each time he faltered, she pulled him back up, her strength keeping him upright. At last, they reached a narrow canyon hidden by thick vines. Lyra pushed them aside, guiding him through. The The walls glowed faintly with natural light, casting the path in shimmering colors. For the first time in days, she felt a sliver of safety. They stopped at a pool fed by underground streams. She helped him lower himself to the edge. He cupped his hands in the water, drinking slowly, the cool liquid easing his parched throat. She watched him closely, fascinated by the simple act. "You care more than you admit," he said after a moment, his voice quiet, her brow furrowed. "I care because I must understand you should not survive my touch. Yet you do. You change the rules of my existence. Or maybe you're the one changing," he said softly. The thought unsettled her more than any battle. She had lived her life believing her path was fixed, but with him nothing felt certain anymore. The roar of engines returned, louder now. Shadows passed above the canyon. Her people were close. She stood quickly, her body tense, her mind racing. The human struggled to rise, but she placed a hand on his shoulder, pressing him back down. "Stay. I will handle this." His eyes darkened. "They'll kill you if they see you." Her gaze hardened, glowing like fire. "Then they will not see me." She moved into the shadows of the canyon, her body blending with the glowing stone. For the first time, she was not fighting for her people or their war. She was fighting for him. As soldiers descended into the forest above, Lyra prepared herself. She knew the danger, but she also knew one truth more powerful than fear. She would not let them take him. The canyon trembled with the thunder of engines above. Dust fell from the walls, scattering into the glowing pool where the human rested. He looked up, hearing the metallic thrum of dropships hovering low. His chest tightened. If her people found them here, there would be no escape. Lyra moved like a shadow along the canyon walls, her glowing eyes scanning the skies. The soldiers would spread out soon. They would descend with orders clear: eliminate survivors, cleanse the battlefield, punish betrayal. She clenched her fists, the faint light of her power pulsing beneath her skin. For once, her gift was not a weapon she wanted to use. It was the last line between him and death. The human shifted, trying to rise despite the weakness in his body. "You can't fight all of them," he said, his voice strained. "I will if I must," Lyra answered. Her voice carried no doubt. He shook his head. "If they see you protect me, they'll call you a traitor. They'll hunt you forever." She paused, her eyes softening. They already would. The sound of boots echoed above as soldiers rappelled down the canyon wall. Their armor glowed with the same faint energy that marked her kind. Their weapons shimmered with light, humming with lethal purpose. The human's heart raced as he counted them. Too many. Lyra stepped into the open. The soldiers froze, surprised to see her alive. Their helmets tilted, confusion in their posture. One raised a hand to his comms, speaking rapidly. Soon, every unit would know. "Commander Lyra," one called, his voice sharp. "You were ordered to report. Why are you here? Why is an enemy alive at your side?" Her body stiffened. Old habits urged her to obey, to explain herself, to return to the chain of command. But when she turned and saw the human leaning weakly against the pool's edge, everything changed. His eyes met hers, filled with trust he had no reason to give. "I chose," she said simply. The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Her words carried weight, but not the kind they expected. "You bring shame," the leader snapped. "You forget who you are. End him, and perhaps we will forgive your delay." The human braced himself, his fists clenching though he had no weapon. He expected her to hesitate, to falter under their orders, but she stepped closer to him instead, placing herself between the soldiers and the human. Her glowing hand lifted, ready, not to strike him, but to shield him. "I will not," she said. The canyon went silent. The soldiers froze in disbelief. One of them muttered a curse under his breath. The leader's eyes narrowed. "Then you are no longer one of us." Energy blasts erupted, cutting through the air. Lyra moved with impossible speed, her body a blur of light. She deflected strikes, with her bare hands redirecting energy into the canyon walls. Stone cracked, dust filling the air. The human shielded his face, watching in awe as she fought. Every movement of hers was precise, controlled, yet different from the way she had fought before. She did not kill. She struck their weapons, their footing, their armor, forcing them back without ending their lives. The soldiers stumbled, unprepared for mercy. The leader charged, blade glowing, aiming for the human. Lyra intercepted, her hand clashing with his blade in a burst of light. The force shook the canyon, sending cracks through the walls. With a final surge, she pushed him back, his weapon flying from his grasp. The other soldiers hesitated. To them, she was still their superior in strength, but her defiance left them stunned. Breathing hard, Lyra stood tall, her hand still glowing. "Leave," she commanded, "or you will not walk away." They hesitated, then slowly retreated, dragging their leader with them. Dropships above hummed louder, pulling the soldiers back. Within moments, the canyon was quiet again. Lyra turned, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. The human stared at her, amazement in his eyes. You saved me. You fought your own people." She lowered herself beside him, her expression unreadable but her voice steady. "I chose you." The words settled between them like fire. He reached for her hand, and this time, she did not pull away. The canyon lay in silence after the soldiers withdrew, but Lyra knew the peace would not last. Her people did not forgive betrayal, and they would not stop hunting her. By choosing the human, she had severed herself from everything she had known. She sat close to him, her hand resting lightly against his arm. He was breathing hard, shaken by the fight but alive. His eyes searched her face as if trying to understand what drove her. "You could have gone back with them," he whispered. "You didn't have to fight." Her gaze held steady. "I did. Because if I left you, I would no longer be myself." He smiled faintly, though his strength was failing. "I never thought anyone like you would risk everything for me." Her lips curved slightly. "And I never thought anyone like you could survive my touch." They rested for a time in the canyon, the pool glowing beside them, the air thick with the echoes of what had happened. Lyra's body ached from the battle, but not in ways she feared. The ache reminded her that she had chosen differently, that she had broken free from the chains of her kind's endless war, but she also knew they could not stay. "They will return with more," she said. "This place is no longer safe." The human struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on her arm. "Then where do we go?" Her eyes lifted to the horizon. "Somewhere they cannot follow. Somewhere even my people fear to tread." They traveled deeper into the forest, away from the canyon. The glowing trees grew taller, the air cooler, the silence heavier. Strange lights flickered in the distance, not from machines, but from the life of the world itself. The human walked slowly, each step painful, but his will carried him forward. Lyra supported him without hesitation, her movement steady, her strength unyielding. At last they reached the edge of a cliff that overlooked the endless stretch of land below. Vast valleys shimmered with alien light, rivers glowing as they cut through the terrain. The sight was breathtaking, even for Lyra, who had lived her whole life among such wonders, but she had never stopped to see them. War had taken that from her. The human leaned against the rocks, staring out in awe. "It's beautiful," he murmured. She studied his face instead of the view. "You see beauty where others see only danger." "Maybe that's why I'm still alive," he said softly. For the first time, she laughed quietly. It was a small sound, but real, and it startled her as much as it warmed him. As night fell, they made a small camp near the cliffside. Lyra kept watch, her eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. The human rested against the rocks, his body weak but healing faster than before. She had touched him again, guiding her power carefully, and each time she did, his strength returned more. It no longer felt like an accident. It felt like something meant to be. "Lyra," he said quietly, his voice carrying through the stillness. "She turned to him. Yes. What will happen to us? The question lingered heavy in the air. She looked away toward the stars above, her expression unreadable. We will be hunted. Both of us. There is no place in the galaxy where my people will not seek me. And still, you stay, he said. Her chest tightened. She met his gaze, and in his eyes she saw no fear, only trust. It was something she had never been given before, something her kind could not understand. In that trust, she found her own answer. Yes, she said. I stay. The human reached for her hand, his touch gentle but steady. She let him hold it, the glow of her skin soft against his. They sat in silence beneath the stars, two fugitives bound by a choice neither had expected. And though the galaxy still burned with war, for the first time in her life, Lyra felt free. The stars stretched wide above the cliff as the night deepened. Lyra sat quietly, her glowing eyes tracing the constellations she had known since childhood. Yet for the first time, the stars felt different. They were not reminders of orders, campaigns, or victories. They felt like a sky that belonged to her, to them unclaimed by war. The human stirred beside her, shifting against the rocks. His voice was stronger now, though still rough. Do you think your people will ever stop chasing us? She shook her head slowly. No. They will hunt until the end. That is their way. That is what I was trained to be. He looked at her carefully, as though weighing her words. But you're not like them anymore. Her chest tightened. The thought unsettled her, but it was true. The moment she refused her commander's order, the moment she chose him, she had broken from them. She had always believed her nature was fixed, that death was her only gift. But now, with him, she had discovered something else. You see me differently, she said softly. I see you, he replied simply. Not the weapon, not the killer, just you. His words warmed her in ways she could not name. Yet deep inside, doubt lingered. She wondered if she deserved to be seen that way, if she could truly escape the shadow of her people. The distant roar of engines broke the quiet. Dropships again, but heavier, louder. They were sweeping wide this time, hunting with more precision. She rose instantly, every muscle alert. The human forced himself to stand beside her, swaying slightly. I won't hide, he said. If they come, I'll fight with you. Lyra turned sharply, her eyes fierce. No, you cannot. You are not ready. He set his jaw stubbornly. I won't let you face them alone. Her hand lifted, glowing faintly as it touched his chest. His heart beat strong under her palm. She closed her eyes, letting her energy flow again, strengthening him. His breathing steadied, his weakness fading. But she pulled back quickly, afraid of what too much might do. You will live, she whispered. That is enough. The sound of the ships grew nearer. Shadows passed across the cliffside, beams of light scanning the ground. Lyra pulled him, close to the rock wall, shielding him with her body. Soldiers descended once again, their weapons glowing, their movements precise. This time there was no confusion. They knew she had betrayed them. Their voices carried sharp commands. Lyra of the Untouchables, you are declared fallen. Release the human and submit. The human gripped her hand tightly. She felt his fear, but also his resolve. He would not let go. She stepped forward, her voice cold and steady. No. The soldiers raised their weapons. Energy crackled in the air, bright against the night. Lyra's glow grew brighter, her power radiating like fire through her veins. She had never felt it this way before, balanced between destruction and life. It was as though touching the human had changed not only him, but her as well. The first shot came. Lyra moved faster than sight, deflecting the blast into the ground. Stone shattered, sparks flying. The human ducked low, but stayed close to her. More shots followed, a storm of energy lighting the night sky. She fought with grace and fury, her hands striking with precision, each movement bending the rules of her gift. She did not drain life from them. She disarmed, disabled, forced them back. Her enemies stumbled, confused again by mercy from one who should know none. But more soldiers descended, their numbers too great. Lyra's body trembled under the strain, her glow flickering with exhaustion. The human grabbed a fallen weapon, holding it awkwardly but with determination. Together, they stood side by side, facing the storm. For the first time, Lyra realized she was no longer fighting for survival alone. She was fighting for something greater, freedom, choice, and the fragile bond between them. And though the night raged with fire and light, she knew one truth with absolute certainty. She would never let him go. The night sky burned with streaks of light as soldiers closed in around the cliff. Lyra stood at the center of it all, her body glowing like a star, her power crackling in the air. Beside her, the human gripped the stolen weapon tightly, his face pale but his eyes fierce. They faced overwhelming numbers, yet neither stepped back. The soldiers shouted commands, demanding surrender, demanding her obedience, but she did not move. She was no longer theirs. Blasts of energy rained down, shaking the ground, scorching the cliff. Lyra raised her hands, redirecting some of the fire into the rock walls. She fought with precision, protecting the human as much as herself. He fired when he could, awkward but determined, each shot forcing their enemies to scatter. Together, they carved a space where they stood, refusing to yield. But the storm did not end. More soldiers descended, their numbers endless. Lyra's glow flickered, her strength thinning. She had never pushed her power this far before. Her body trembled, her breath shallow. She knew she could not fight forever. The human noticed, his heart tightening as he saw her falter. "Lyra," he called, his voice desperate. "You can't hold them all." She turned to him, her face calm despite the chaos. "I do not need to hold them, I only need to choose." Her words cut through the night, steady and sure. She reached for his hand again, her glowing fingers slipping into his. The human braced, himself, expecting the deadly burn that should have come. But once more, nothing happened. Instead, a surge of light spread from her into him, filling the air around them with a brilliance so bright the soldiers staggered back. The connection between them grew stronger than before, her power, once only death, bent into something new. It shielded him, strengthened him, wrapped around both of them like armor made of living light. The soldiers fired again, but the blasts dissolved before touching them, fading into harmless sparks. The leader of the squad shouted in disbelief, "Impossible! Your touch is death. How can he survive?" Lyra's eyes glowed brighter than ever. "Because he sees me, not as a weapon, not as a monster, as more." The soldiers hesitated, their confidence breaking. None of them had ever seen such defiance, such transformation. To them she had become something beyond their control. The human squeezed her hand, his voice steady. "You're not their weapon anymore. You're free." The truth of his words struck her deeper than any order or oath. For the first time she believed it fully. She was not bound by her kind's curse. She was not doomed to destroy. She was something new. Because he had touched her and lived. Because he had chosen her. Because she had chosen him. Her power erupted in one final surge. Not as a weapon, but as a wave of pure force. The soldiers were hurled back, their weapons shattered, their dropships forced to retreat. The cliff trembled, dust and sparks filling the air, until at last the night fell silent. Lyra collapsed to her knees, her strength spent, the glow fading from her veins. The human caught her, lowering himself beside her. She leaned against him, her body trembling but alive. "You did it," he whispered, her lips curved faintly, exhaustion in her voice. "No. We did." They sat together on the cliff, watching. The dropships vanish into the distance. The war still raged across the galaxy, but here in this moment, something greater had been won. She was no longer a soldier bound to kill. He was no longer just a fragile human in the wrong place. Together, They had defied an entire species' truth. The stars stretched wide above them, endless and bright. Lyra lifted her gaze, her hand still in his. For the first time she felt not fear, not doubt, but hope. The human squeezed her fingers gently. Where do we go now? She leaned into him, her eyes soft with the light of a new beginning. Anywhere, she said, as long as you hold my hand. And with that, the untouchable and the human who should have died began their journey, not as enemies, not as fugitives, but as something the galaxy had never seen before. Together,